without further ado, when Chris is ready, we will be joined by the one, the only, Ryan Hana, talking some Red Wings.
Yeah, I'm excited.
He's been the number one guy on Twitter right now, or Threads. I don't know if he's on Threads yet, but I'm shouting out his Threads either way, to report what's going on between the Brinket and the Detroit Red Wings. What up, though, man?
How's it going, guys?
Hey, thanks for joining us, man. I know you've been really, really busy with everything going on with Detroit Red Wings. I want to ask, first of all, because draft night, Stevie had mentioned something immediately after the pick, and he said they're still building the assets through the draft, and that they're still in the rebuild phase. And to me, I did take it wrong initially because I want to see the playoffs now. I mean, as soon as Stevie touched the ground here in Detroit, we all expect like the fantasy magic to happen. But how is this offseason paired with those comments by Stevie Y, and how have you taken them?
Yeah, you know what? I don't blame any fan who has the expectation to come in and at this point in the rebuild say, yeah, let's see some success, let's see the playoffs. There's a hot minute there last season where Detroit was actually making noise for a playoff spot, which surprised all of us, and then they kind of fell back to reality. You can hear statements like that, and you can get frustrated. And honestly, covering the team and also being a fan of the team, it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. There's realities that the Red Wings are working with. They have had less than zero lottery luck, so they don't get a free Connor Bedard. They didn't get a free, Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, nothing like that. Yzerman has done really well with the first round picks, the high first round picks that he's had so far. Has he been perfect? No, but even for someone who is disappointed with where the Red Wings are now, I just don't see what else he really can have done. And the two picks that they walked away with in the first round, I think Red Wings fans should be really, really happy with that haul. Two very different players who fill immediate needs in the lineup. So both Nate Danielson and Axel Sandin Pellikka have spots in a competitive Red Wings team in the future, provided that they pan out. So yeah, overall with the first round, don't buy in too much into what Steve Yzerman says. I think the Red Wings made a big step. It's just not immediate.
Yeah, I like those picks, definitely. You got they kind of filled holes needed. You got your face-off guy, and then you got a right-handed scoring D-man. So you got a couple guys that can fill some gaps for sure. But looking at what Red Wings fans are most interested in, that you've been very tied into, very linked in with, is the Alex DeBrincat news and what's going on with him. We heard rumblings about possibly before the draft, possibly during the draft, what's going to happen there. But now as time passes, he still hasn't moved. Have you heard anything else about talks with that? Is Stevie just still trying to get one of those Steve Yzerman deals where he gets this guy and everybody's like, oh shit, well, it's just Steve Yzerman, or has the talks kind of slowed down?
Yeah, so the facts that we know about this are, one, Alex DeBrincat wants to come to Detroit. The way he set up the teams he'd be willing to sign a long-term extension with, it was essentially teams that couldn't afford Alex DeBrincat with their cap space and the Detroit Red Wings. So he's almost not tying Ottawa's hands to Detroit, but he's really making it so if they want to get the most return they can, it's going to be to Detroit. Steve Yzerman knows this. Steve Yzerman's a grinder. He's a killer to work with in terms of trading with other GMs. It's a joke every time Yzerman makes a trade. Like his that GM's fan base is like, why did you even pick up the phone? Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet has done a lot of really good reporting here, and he's said, Yzerman's a grinder. He works you, and then he gets to what his offer is, and then he stops. So that's ostensibly where we are now. Is Detroit has put forward an offer. Yzerman has given Pierre Dorian an offer, and he said, "This is what I'm giving you." Pierre Dorian classified it as pennies on the dollar, so we can say this isn't a massive return. And Yzerman's angle is, well, we have the leverage. He only wants to come here, really. So you can trade him somewhere else if you want to spite me, but then we're just going to sign him for free in a year anyways when he's an unrestricted free agent. So that's kind of where things are at. You can't really blame Pierre Dorian of the Ottawa Senators for holding out, because it's, I'd be pissed off if I was the Sens GM. It's a bad situation to be in, and Yzerman's basically playing chicken right now.
Well, how do you feel about DeBrincat as the fit to the Detroit Red Wings? Like, does it feel like more of a blessing because we actually have a top guy that wants to come here? But is he actually like a good fit for the team?
Yeah, you're exactly right on both of those points. It's probably been, a decade since a top free agent has wanted to come here, even longer. So the fact that anyone who's remotely good at hockey who could play in your top six wants to come to the Detroit Red Wings is like, you're flashing back to my youth here. So that's huge. And is he a fit? Yeah. He's not a big body. He doesn't play a great 200-foot game. So I know people who want to nitpick his game. They're not wrong about that. but he scores. He's a 40-goal scorer. He didn't do it last year. I don't know that he would do it in his first season on this Red Wings cast. It's not like the most talented team, but he scores. And what the Red Wings lack the most is goal scoring. Like, this is a guy who comes in and does something that almost no one else on the Red Wings does, which is score. Plain and simple, you need to score goals to win games, and I'm of the mind of you can't try to find this perfect player who's going to score goals, play excellent defense, be 6'3", it's just not the modern NHL, and you don't get an opportunity to get these guys for free or to even trade for them at all, period. So in my mind, yeah, not only is it a perfect fit, you kind of have to make this happen, whether it's this season or next.
If it's not DeBrincat, is there another name out there that's a realistic possibility for the Detroit Red Wings?
It's a thin market, man. It's a really thin market. Teams who have goal scorers don't want to trade them. I think the Red Wings picked up one of the most efficient goal scorers in free agency in Daniel Sprong. He came in cheap. He's not going to be the solution to everything. It's just a small step. You know, Vladimir Tarasenko was reportedly going to the Carolina Hurricanes and then fired his agent, and then now they've reset that whole process. He could come in, but that's not a long-term play. Other than that, there's not really a lot out there, barring some unforeseen trade. And this is the NHL, not the NBA. Like, trades like that just don't really happen.
Yeah, and this guy, you know, if they bring in DeBrincat, obviously, you know, he's on your top line. He would be by far the best goal scorer that Dylan Larkin has played with in his career. Like, how much would that help Dylan Larkin's improvement? We saw him have one of the best years of his career last year as a point-a-game guy. How much would bringing in a guy like DeBrincat help him get better as a player?
Oh, massively. And not just Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond and any other player in the Red Wings top six. You know, Lucas Raymond had a tougher sophomore season. Part of that's just the sophomore slump. Other teams get tape on you and the game plan for you. But a lot of that is, you know, the Red Wings don't have enough good players to pull the pressure away from their key guys. So if you're Dylan Larkin or you're Lucas Raymond, you have no space. The other team collapses on you instantly, and that's a good game plan because, you know, the other players on the ice aren't really a threat. Last season, Jacob Vrana and Tyler Bertuzzi were hurt or gone all year, essentially. And so it really was a ton of pressure on Detroit's top players. Dylan Larkin's a seasoned veteran at this point and in the prime of his career, so he was able to work through it and have a phenomenal season in a contract year, mind you. And Lucas Raymond struggled at points. So, yeah, to have someone who could be a threat on the other side of the ice, that would be massive for not just Larkin, but also Raymond and anyone else playing in that top six.
Ryan, I want to ask you about the prospects of the Detroit Red Wings. How many of these guys, the names of Johanssons, the Edvinsons, Mazur was speaking to the media today too. Like, how many of these guys can we expect to make the jump to the actual roster this year? That's the one thing that helped me stay patient with realizing, you know, with the Red Wings not doing too much in the offseason was that, like, Red Wings, the hockey's just different. It's not the NFL or NBA where guys are drafted that are immediately on the team. It just takes 3-4 years sometimes these guys to make the main squad. But how many of these guys can we expect on this year?
It's tough this year. Steve Yzerman has done what he's always done, which is he's built a roster that makes it so the rookies have to earn their way in. And to give fair play to him and Derek Lalonde, he's never hesitated to do it. You know, Mo Seider, Lucas Raymond, last season Elmer Soderblom. When Jonathan Berggren came up, he stuck on the roster. So
Johnny
if you
Burgers.
earn it, you keep it. Yanni Burgers, that's right. So how many are going to make it? I'd say by the end of the year, Simon Edvinsson's a regular. And let's say conservatively, at least one of Marco Kasper or Carter Mazur is a regular. I don't want to guess any more than 3 because that's a lot to ask, especially in a lineup that has a lot of guys. But a lot can happen. You know, injuries, trades, whatever it might be. Yzerman's not afraid to make the tough move, and so let's say 2 to 3. But if things get crazy, you might even see 1 or 2 more there.
Yeah, and staying with the prospect situation, we're going to different guys. Now we see the jewel, the guy that a lot of Red Wings fans are hype about in Sebastian Cossa. He's getting moved up to the Grand Rapids Griffins this year. And what is his timeline looking like now? Obviously, it's sped up because now he's right there. If he I know Stevie signed, you know, Lyon. He went out, he drafted a couple goalies, but if this guy performs the way he did with Toledo in Grand Rapids, there's no way they can leave him down there, right?
It's tough with goalies, man. It's really tough. We always joke that goalies are voodoo and their development's weird. Sebastian Cossa came from an extremely talented junior team in the WHL, and so had really good numbers because he's a great goalie, but also the team in front of him was just phenomenal. So he did struggle a little bit initially when he came over to pro hockey, but yeah, by the end of the season with the Toledo Walleye was just outstanding. And it was time for him to make the jump in the AHL. But each jump it's not incremental. It's a massive leap in terms of what a goalie has to face when they get to the AHL, and the NHL is just a whole different beast. So I think if you see any games from Sebastian Cossa this year, that would be a massive, massive victory. But I wouldn't hold it against Sebastian Cossa at all if we don't see him in a Red Wings uniform for at least another 2 seasons or more. If you're talking like long-term, how long until Sebastian Cossa is like a full-time Detroit Red Wing? Impossible to try to lay that out confidently. Anybody who tells you they know for sure is a liar. His goalie coach wouldn't say that for sure right now. I'm guessing at least a couple more seasons down in the AHL at least somewhat before we see Sebastian Cossa start as a backup. He's a goalie with a lot of talent, a lot of raw skill, but he needs a lot of refinement. And that has been his MO from the moment he was drafted. So it's better for Sebastian Cossa to stay and for them to sand down the rough edges before they throw him in the the pit of fire that's the NHL.
Yeah.
What about for the casuals like me? Who's the one prospect you'd say to bet your money on or keep your eye on the Detroit Red Wings got coming up?
A guy that some people know about, some people might not, is Amadeus Lombardi. He's a draft pick that wasn't, one of the first-round draft picks, but from last season, he was a fourth-round draft pick, 113th overall, and he has been just so impressive from the moment he's been drafted. The following season with the Flint Firebirds, which people will be familiar with in the OHL, he has just been outstanding through and through. Really, he's not a fourth-round talent. He probably is a first-round talent, but because he missed an entire season of hockey due to COVID, they were able to snag him later on, and this guy's exciting. Like you want to talk about late round steals, Amadeus Lombardi could very well be that kind of late round steal who comes in and plays meaningful games for the Red Wings in their middle six or potentially higher. Mm-hmm. And then this past season, I really, really like the addition of Noah Dover-Nielsen, brother of Liam Dover-Nielsen, who was drafted in 2021 in the 5th round. His brother Noah was drafted in the 3rd round this year, and this is a guy who can score. A Red Wings team that didn't really add too much by way of scoring in either free agency or the draft. This is a guy who can score. So if he makes it, he's, you don't really put your money on 3rd-round picks, but if he does, he could be an impact player.
And speaking of filling out the roster, which what we talked about earlier in free agency and different things with what Stevie did, grabbing guys that are going to be glue pieces, those bottom 6 guys. You didn't grab any top shelf guys really, but guys that'll fill out roles that can do a lot of different things for the team. And more on that is the Zadina situation that broke earlier today, where he was let go because he didn't end up going to Grand Rapids or didn't want to go to Grand Rapids, which was a breach of his contract, and ended up forfeiting I believe it was $4.7 million remaining on his contract. Can you speak a little to that and what actually went down and what that means for the team?
Yeah, so the way this actually played out was Filip Zadina was, before the draft, he requested a trade. He just wanted a change of scenery, wanted a fresh start, and look, you can't blame him for wanting that. He's had a lot of bad luck in Detroit, but I think more than anything, it's been on him that it hasn't worked out in Detroit. But sometimes a player just needs a different situation to unlock their mental game. Filip Zadina has been more affected by, his mental game than any other Red Wings prospect I've seen in this generation. He's very obviously in his own head, so if he needed to change the scenery, that's fine. He had 2 years left at $1.825 million on the cap per year. No other GM wanted to trade for him, and no other GM picked him up for free when he went through waivers. So when he went through waivers and wasn't picked up, that meant he's still in the Red Wings organization. He would go to Red Wings camp and he tried to earn a roster spot. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to say that this guy who couldn't hold a roster spot very well for a lot of his career in Detroit didn't have a really great chance at a very full roster now. And so he essentially said through his agent, well, if I don't make the team and I go to Grand Rapids, then I won't report. So at that point, Yzerman had 2 options. He said, you can either wait to see if that happens and you'll be in breach of contract and we put you through unconditional waivers for the purpose of termination, or we mutually agree to part ways now and we get the same result. His contract is terminated. He forfeits $4.56 million in real salary, which I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And the Red Wings save $1.825 million in cap space per year for the next 2 years, and Yzerman rids himself of a headache, and that's what they ended up doing. So I don't know. It's a long fall from the 6th overall pick that everyone was really excited about. goal scorer from the QMJHL, was supposed to come in here and fill their nets. Everyone knows that infamous quote. But I don't quite understand it from Zadina's perspective. To give up that much money in 2 years of guaranteed work in the NHL, he'd have to have a massive turnaround to outdo that over the next 2 years. But hey, if he wants to bet on himself, he should count himself fortunate that Steve Yzerman obliged, and now he has that opportunity.
Yeah, that's for sure. And one more question before we let you go. Darren DMAC, he's been talking about preaching playoffs this year. It's playoffs this year. It's going to happen. If not, I'm going to start asking some questions. And I agree with him. I think with what they've built this roster with, still hoping for a trade for DeBrincat, I think they're in a very good situation to get to playoffs. I just wanted to know, as the roster sits now, if there's one player you would need to step up the most outside of Husso, who would that player be to get them into the playoffs? Because for me, it's Michael Rasmussen. Being like one of my favorite players on the team doesn't help, but when they were cooking on that West Coast trip, when they won like 6 in a row, he was a big part of that. When they moved him to wing, he was playing more free, and then when he goes down, they kind of unravel. So who would that be, that one guy for you this year?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's a really great point about Rasmussen. I know he's just a middle six winger, but that those 2 Ottawa games that they lost back to back, where everyone said that's where the playoff hopes ended, they really miss Michael Rasmussen because they got bullied all over the ice. But for me, the one player who needs to step up this season is Lucas Raymond. I don't think he had a bad year last year. I don't think he had as good of a year as he could have. He needs to be stronger on his skates. He needs to be stronger on his stick. He needs to strengthen his shot. He has a really good shot. He needs to use that more. He needs to create better space for himself, and he needs to constantly be adapting his game. And the good news is he can do all those things. He's talented enough to do it. We've seen him do it. But this is a guy who I think could be a point per game player for the Red Wings. And if they are going to be a playoff team, they need production and scoring from someone other than Dylan Larkin, an aging Perron, a Kubalik who's hot and cold, and let's say they bring in DeBrincat, it still needs to be Lucas Raymond who comes in and has a shining season. So if he can take that next step and become a bona fide star player, then yeah, I don't think DMAC is wrong. I think playoffs are within reach. A lot has to happen that goes really well, and they have to stay very healthy, but I think that starts with Lucas Raymond.
Hell yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say no.
Oh, I was going to ask you best spot for Poutine, Metro Detroit.
I'm bad. Someone asked me this the other day. Look, I love you. I'm sure you asked because I love poutine. Yeah. I am not picky when it comes to poutine, as long as it's cheese curds, gravy, and you can do a lot of different fries. Just don't get too weird with it. I have to ask you guys. I haven't had a lot of poutine around Metro Detroit.
We'd have to hit up Fish. Ask Fish. He'd know.
Detroit Wing Company for me.
Yeah.
Because the actual cheese curds. Yeah. Because when I went up north, we were trying it too, because it's kind of close to Canada. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the places did like regular cheese. You know what I'm saying? Which I'm not complaining about, but it's all about the curds
you need
for me.
The cheese curds.
Yeah, and the curds.
For sure.
If it's not curds, it's not poutine. It's just cheese fries. Hate to say it. It's still delicious.
Yes.
It's got to be curds, man.
I'm with you. I was disappointed, for sure.
Ryan, we appreciate you joining us, sharing your time with us, dropping some insight. It's great for me to finally be able to talk hockey with somebody on the show.
Hey, guy.
I itch for it all the time. But if the people want more of you, they love what you brought to the show, tell them where they can find you, or they can find your content and what you guys got cooking up lately.
Yeah, definitely. You can find the Winged Wheel Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, at Winged Wheel Pod on Twitter, at Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram and Threads. Yeah, we did it. wingedwheelpodcast.com just to find all the information. So at wingedwheelpodcast.com, it'll point you to all the places you can listen to the show: Apple, Spotify, etc. We post twice weekly. We're the biggest Red Wings show on the air, and we always try to have really great guests on. So right now we're posting an episode with Max Bultman. Editing it. Actually, I'll finish editing it once we're done here. And yeah, we'd love for you to tune in. And hey, you guys have been great. Always happy to come on and talk hockey. You guys both very clearly know your stuff, and appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. We appreciate you too.
All right, take care.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It's the best.
You said you know your stuff. Look at you.
My Swedes. I know my Swedes.
You said you were gonna let me talk hockey, and then you took the first 5 questions.
No, dude. I didn't.
Bastard. No, I'm just kidding.
I did take one back to back.
Great interview. Shout out to Ryan, man. That was awesome.